So the two words that have been used a lot actually today, tokenism would be my first thing, but the goal, love your neighbour as yourself. Mark 12:31. Once I remember being at college and one of my friends saying, Jacqueline, churches shouldn't be allowed to move on from that particular scripture until the church have got it. Because once we get that, everything else comes out of that. And I just think, it's quite powerful. But tokenism, but I'm going to give it a slightly different slant. Michelle Obama in her book Belonging said that being the first black of anything is difficult. And this tokenism, you can have a look, you can, when you come out of here, go and have a look at websites of churches that will tell you that they are multiracial, blah, blah, blah. And you can see the pictures of their congregation, look at the leadership. When you look at the leadership, and there is only one, if you actually got the privilege of speaking to that one and ask them how they are supported in taking racial justice or issues forward, you will find that they are suffering from what I could term black fatigue. Because it is very difficult to push when you are the only person in the room having that conversation. Because it doesn't matter if when you start talking about racial justice, people are going to bring in, but what about people with disabilities? What about people with this? What about people with that? No one says, if you're talking about the environment, well, what about racism? You know, but the moment you pick it, people immediately try to turn and change, reshape the conversation. And it's really difficult because people are defensive. So for me, I think that would have been the first thing and how I see it. But also, not wanting, tokenism also for me is putting somebody in a position and expecting them to be a monolith, you know, to represent every black person that you've ever met, or black or brown person, or whatever it is, whatever group they come from. I would never expect to go into a room with the majority of this country that are white and expect them all to hold the same view because of the colour of their skin. But we are. Then the other tokenism is then you are selected. Sometimes the person selected is the person who offers the most conciliatory point of view. And all of those things that feed into a system that don't allow for nuance, they don't even understand the different experiences of Black Caribbean heritage to Black African heritage. And then when we start to break those down into the countries within those two continents and places and the differences of those things, you know, conversations of people telling me, I like your extensions. No, they're not extensions. It's my hair. Would you go to Cheryl Cole and tell her, I like your extensions? No, you'd tell her, I like your hair. It's that whole othering of people. When I worked with, and it all comes under this tokenism and belonging. When I was a student and worked at a theological education centre, I know that some of the international students, he said to me, when I go to church, I've realised that they're all self-styled immigration officers. I said, what do you mean? He said, yeah, the first question they ask you is, when are you going back? The othering of people. We start with what is different about you instead of what makes you belong. It's just basic hospitality. The word says practice it.
That's great. That's great. And even just hearing you share the experience of that young person who goes to church every week and is asked that same question of when are you going back, you know, and it just, sometimes we can say these things, but when you think about the experience of what that must feel like to come to church, to come to a place where you should belong, where that shouldn't matter, and for that to be the presenting question to you every single week. The exhaustion, the trauma, the impact on who you are is huge.